Good afternoon, everyone. We hope you are all safe. Today, me and my colleagues Alexandra, Mohammed, and Sadiq gonna talk about the JP Morgan and Chase Co. merger. JP Morgan Chase and Co. is an American multinational investment bank and financial services holding company which is located in New York City. JP Morgan Chase is ranked as the largest bank in the United States and the 60th largest bank in the world. It's also world most valuable bank by the market capitalization. JP Morgan is the oldest, renewed, and most significant financial institution world over. Since 1799, the two banks had separately grown and prospered by offering immense customer attention and satisfy their individual needs. The company is a global financial service powerhouse whose operations span more than 50 nations. JP Morgan Chase Co. is founded on the philosophy 1000 procedure organization.
Good day everybody, I'm Alexandra and today we will discuss the history and background of merging process of JP Morgan Chase & Co. Let's start with what is merging and acquisition is. Basically, it is the most frequently used method of growth for companies. It presents a company with a potentially larger market share and open it up to a more diversified market. At times, a merger or an acquisition simply makes a company larger, expands its staff and production, and gives it more financial and other resources to be a stronger competitor on the market. The history of JP Morgan Chase spans more than 200 years and includes numerous firms who merged to form today's banking conglomerate. It starts from 1799 when New York Assemblyman Aaron Burr charts the Manhattan Company as a New York City water supplier. In the early years of US history, obtaining a license to open a bank was a complex procedure. That's why banks were often registered as a company. Formerly, the Manhattan Company was supposed to deal with water supply in New York, but banking services were its main focus. The Manhattan Company would much later merge the Chase Bank. Later, in 1877, concurrently, John Thompson, a 75-year-old financial news publisher and banker, established Chase National Bank. And after this, one of the main constituents of conglomerate JP Morgan & Co. was founded in 1871 by John Pipton Morgan and Philadelphia banker Anthony Drexel. Their partnership was originally called Drexel Morgan & Co. and served as an agent for Europeans who wanted to invest in the United States. But after this, in 1893, Anthony Drexel dies, and 2 years later, Morgan Drexel is renamed as JP Morgan & Co. During the First World War, the United States from a debtor turned into a creditor, which contributed to the rapid development of the banking sector. Additionally, the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 greatly simplified the procedure for opening bank branches, including foreign branches. Thus, 20s became a period of enlargement of banks and expansions of the scope of their activities. Chase National Bank during this period absorbed 5 American banks and 3 Latin American branches and became the largest bank in the world with one of the largest international branch networks. After the 20s, the stock exchange crash of 1929 and the Great Depression came. Their main reason was the speculative policies of American banks and, last but not least, JP Morgan & Co. activity. After this, in 1933, the Glass-Steagall Act was passed, separating commercial and investment banking. Glass-Steagall Act has affected most of the predecessors of JP Morgan Chase, and they became commercial banks. In particular, the investment activities of JP Morgan & Co. was separated in 1935 into a separate company, Morgan Stanley. Later after this, in 1955, Chase Bank merged with Burr's The Manhattan Company to become Chase Manhattan Bank. After this, in 1980s, the United States began to lose legislation governing banks. In particular, some restrictions on the Glass-Steagall Act were lifted. And it was also allowed to create networks of branches covering all the states. This gives a motivation to the rapid growth of banks due to the opening of new branches, expanding the scope of their activities and merging. In 1996, Chase Manhattan is purchased by Chemical Banks, but the name Chase Manhattan is retained because it was more globally recognized. They formed the country's largest bank holding. And finally, in 2000, Chase Manhattan purchased JP Morgan & Co. for $34 billion, and now it is known as JP Morgan Chase & Co.
Hello, my name is Mohammed Sheikh Muradov, and I will be talking about the one-year post-merger analysis. So the merger between Chase and JP Morgan had advanced the institution into a considerable investment bank in 2011 as the drafters of the merger agreement had anticipated. However, the unforeseen decline in the economy and Wall Street performance spelled doom for the merger as the numerous stock sales, mergers, among other lucrative prospects that were intended to justify the high-value acquisition, had already shrunk. Financial analysts and dealmakers were already foreseeing a scenario whereby JP Morgan Chase would have been obliged to undertake another massive merger with an emphasis on diversifying away from its heavy focus on Wall Street. In the third quarter of 2011, JP Morgan Chase experienced a two-thirds decline of its profits from $1.4 billion in the same period a year ago to $449 million. In 2011, the company's stock dropped by 15 percentage points compared to the shares of other rival banks. Still, the JP Morgan Chase stock price surpassed the value of other investment banks, Goldman Sachs, that the bank deems to be its formidable rival. A large proportion of the job cuts were focused on high-salaried investment bankers. By the end of 2011, JP Morgan Chase was anticipating a reduction of 6,000 jobs in its investment banking arm. The bank forecasted the annual cost-cutting savings to be in the range of $3.6 billion, equated to an original prediction of $2 billion during the merger. The newly merged outfit would possess assets with a total value of $660 billion, ranking JP Morgan Chase as the third biggest bank holding company in the US, same position as Chase's pre-merger ranking. Financial advisors of the two companies valued the deal at $207 a share, or approximately $33 billion, a premium of 16.7% above JP's regular hours close of $177.75. The contract between JP Morgan and Chase was also expected to terminate Chase's quest for a critical investment banking house or securities company. It had been long rumored and speculated that Chase desired a firm such as Merrill Lynch & Co. Chase's boss, Harrison, claimed that he was open to explore fill-in acquisitions, although the Morgan contract offered the firm its desired partner going forward. The bosses of JP Morgan and Chase are all in agreement that the increase in revenue is more critical to the deal compared to the associated cost savings. They anticipate the growth to be fueled by their ability to offer JP Morgan's more extensive product range to Chase's much more significant customer base.
Hello everyone, my name is Sarwar. I'm one of the members of a group. So my part will be analysis and thoughts, predictions on the merger of the two banks, JP Morgan and Chase Manhattan. In this analysis, there were both positive and negative sides on this merger. So now I'll talk about the advantages and disadvantages. So, mergers are among the largest and most commented upon financial transactions on the stock markets. However, it's not easy to identify the world's largest merger. There are at least two criteria that can be used: size of the merged entity, measured by total assets, the amount of money in the transaction. Advantages is that a bank merger helps your institution scale up quickly and gain a large number of new customers instantly. Not only does an acquisition give your bank more capital, to work with when it comes to lending and investments, but it also provides a broader geographic footprint in which to operate. That way, you achieve your growth goals quicker. Predictions of 2000s. Stock market and banking analysts foresee a 10 to 20 cent per share decline in earnings for the year 2000. The analysts further forecast that Chase would generate $4.45 per share for 2021, an increase from the projected profit of $4 in 2000s. The analysts categorize the merger as a good deal. However, some analysts are quite skeptical of the merger. They claim that once speculation of impending mergers are rubbished off, the prevailing share price will be hard to sustain. Another analyst with Mutual Securities, namely Charles Peabody, believes that Chase paid exorbitantly for the merger, which is going to strain its finance substantially. And there will be a drop in the share in the two companies also. To sum up all, the merger between JP Morgan and Chase Manhattan is a good move. There is a high probability that the merger will culminate in cost savings associated with downsizing and global alliance, which will enable the merged banks to bolster their size and enhance market competencies while developing some technological proficiencies. The merger already began to show results as JP Morgan Chase won some notable projects immediately after the alliance. More banking analysts were skeptical of the merger, citing issues such as difficulty in sustaining the prevailing share prices without another acquisition, financial crunch from the exorbitant merger cost, and the drop in the share prices of the two merging companies due to impending integration challenges. In other words, there will be massive job cuts, drop in share of two merging companies. So this was the end of our presentation, and thank you so much.